And welcome to another episode of PPC Town Hall. My name is Fred Valles, and I'm your host today. So we have a great topic. We're going to talk about 4 huge money-wasting things that you might be doing in Google Ads. So this is a really good episode to watch. We're going to get really tactical with some advice, and we're going to show you how you can use programs like the Ads Editor to undo some of those mistakes that a lot of people make because Google makes some of these things default settings. And to add a counterpoint to that, we also have Microsoft on the call today, and we're going to take a look at what are some of the things that you can do in Microsoft ads that you simply can't do in Google today. So what are some of the benefits? So I'm obviously ex-Google, and for a long time, it was my thinking that Microsoft was basically doing the exact same thing that Google was doing. But over the years, that's become less and less true. So what are some of those things that are pretty unique and pretty powerful in Microsoft ads? And if you've been paying way too much attention to just Google, what is it that you should be thinking about when it comes to Microsoft? So those are the topics for today. So we'll get rolling here with our guests, and I'll introduce them in just a minute. All right, and my guests today, David Szetela and John Lee. Welcome, guys. Good to have you on again.
Thank you, Frederic. Good to be
Howdy.
here.
Thank you.
Yes, and David, we have to do the requisite bonjour.
Bonjour, ça va bien?
Ça va très bien.
Mon ami?
Oui.
Parfait. Hey, John, what's your T-shirt say?
Bourbon and horses and Kentucky Derby. I mean, you know, when you live in Louisville, if you don't wear stuff like this, people think you're weird. So,
All right. So, John, you're joining us from Louisville. And people on the call watching us, it's always nice if you chat in and tell us where you're coming in from, how things are going. And then also use that chat to ask us questions throughout. So let's do a quick, a proper intro here, right? I mean, I said we have David and John, but who are David and John? So, David, why don't we start with you here for a minute? So founder and current president of the Paid Search Association. But you've got a longer career than that, right? So tell us a little bit about
yourself. Well, currently I am spending most of my time managing PPC campaigns for clients and doing audits under the moniker of FMB Media. And then I'm spending a good chunk of my time, a growing chunk, managing a crazy band of board members that includes Frederic and John, and a lot of your guests recently, Frederic, I noticed, but on the board of directors, and we're so glad to have them. Yeah. But so the Paid Search Association is a nonprofit association that is for probably everybody in the audience, people that are managing PPC campaigns. And by PPC campaigns, despite the slightly awkward name, we're talking about anything that is paid by the click, advertising that's paid by the click. So that includes Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, et cetera, et cetera. Do you want me to talk about upcoming
let's hold up for a second. So okay. Let's go to
ahead.
John.
Go ahead.
So John, currently at Microsoft, but that's also not your first stint in the industry.
It is not, no.
And right now you head up education for Microsoft Ads, right?
To say that I headed up as I mean, that sounds wonderful. Not entirely the truth, but yeah, no, I've been in this industry now 14 years, which is mind-boggling to me. You know, helped launch PPC Hero blog, worked at a few agencies. David and I were working together for a time at Clicks Marketing. And so, you know, again, a storied history on the agency side, and for the past 4 years, yeah, with Microsoft Advertising, working in learning and development, putting together little bits of training, right, to help people understand our platform, but just how does it fit into context with the industry at large.
Nice. And Clicks Marketing, it's like the nexus of everything PPC related these days. Like everybody's at some point worked there. Or
that's right.
I heard that Kayla from
yeah,
here.
that's right. That's right. They just hired Kayla, brought her on, and so.
Do you know anything more about what that means?
I do, and
you can't say.
we'll leave it there. I mean, let's just say, I mean, her experience with Hannafin was strong, both account management, campaign or client management, but also sales. My gut says likely bring her on to grow.
Yeah. Well, and I know her most from the conferences that they were doing. So I'm just curious if there's another conference in the works. Seems a bit of an odd time, of course, to do an in-person conference. And David, actually, you got something to say about conferences, right? So let's maybe start with that. What's the PSA doing education-wise?
Well, it was interesting that in May of this past, actually in March, April of this past year, or of this year, it seems like years, doesn't it?
Yes.
Of this year, shortly after we had formed the association, we all got sequestered. We all were locked down in our homes, and several conferences that had been scheduled, including the HeroConf, had to fold up. So having this board full of PPC experts, also sitting there with slide decks of their own that they had planned to show at conferences like PPC Conf and SMX, we decided to kind of on the spur of the moment and quickly put together a virtual conference. Turned out to be one of the first virtual conferences, and went pretty well. I mean, we were all practiced at giving presentations at conferences, so I think that part helped. So we decided that, kind of based on SMX's or Third Door Media's research into plans, whether people were planning on attending in-person conferences anytime soon, the answer to that question turned out to be no, and the respondents expecting not to be attending in-person conferences for a long time, like into next year. So the Paid Search Association decided that we would hold another virtual conference, and that is going to be coming up in January, the 26th, 27th, and 28th.
Nice. So you heard it here first, January, another
you heard it first.
Virtual. And is that going to be something to pay for or free?
It will be free. That's correct. Yeah, it'll be free. But I also,
folks, if you heard it here, we might still end up charging you because we're planning a thing. But it's likely going to be free.
It'll be free. I also wanted to mention one other thing that is kind of serendipity, which is that Ginny Marvin, who has for years done the content together with Brad Geddes and Matt Van Wagner for the SMX conferences, have done the PPC related content for the SMX conferences. Ginny is on our board, and she's coincidentally leaving Third Door Media right when we will be putting together the next conference. So I kind of
you're roping her in already.
I coerced her.
Jenny, if you're listening, you just got voluntold.
Yeah, no, she agreed. I wouldn't bust.
I've never heard that term, voluntold.
So yeah, Jenny's the best, and she's going to be instrumental in putting together the best agenda.
But for as long as we still have Ginny working over at SMX and Third Door Media, let's read an article from her. So she was posting this yesterday. Mm-hmm. It's never a boring day in the search industry, right? So Google Ads introduces Performance Max campaigns. What have you guys heard about that one?
That it sounds like something out of an 80s movie. That was what I read. But that's about as far into the details as I got.
Yeah.
So you're saying that basically that format is going to die because... Yeah, okay.
I think it's another, smart. Smart in Google's parlance usually means this is for newbies that don't have time to learn every nuance and the curiosity to poke into every corner like we do of paid search.
All right.
So
step towards leveling the playing field, letting the competition. Yeah. The competition rises mostly Google's boat. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft's too, right? I mean, like at the end of the day, the more people you have competing in an auction, the more money.
Well, and I would say like this is another milestone in the trend on the Google side, on the Microsoft advertising side, and everywhere else towards more and more automation, particularly when you think about the massive potential scale and reach of SMB, right? The small business space is huge and still relatively untapped when you think about client base. And so you see what Google's doing, their investments, we're doing much the same at Microsoft advertising. Off the top of my head, I'm forgetting the name of it, but Microsoft Garage actually a couple months ago announced it's like a marketing center. So it is Google ads, it is Microsoft advertising, and it is Facebook ads. And I forget a bevy of others, pulling it all together, helping you to automate it and understand. It's much like a smart campaign, right? To say, okay, here's my objective. Now get me the best, clicks and conversions possible. So like, there's a lot of investment in that right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really fascinating. So let's talk about that a bit more here for a second, because one of the premises or the pain points, I think, in PPC is that you have these walled gardens of Microsoft and Google and Facebook and Amazon. But you're saying that Microsoft is actually making a play to sort of bridge that divide.
I'm gonna get real deep here for a second. So like this device right here should be proof in the pudding that Microsoft can play nice with other companies. This was a partnership with Android, right? Yeah. This thing is fantastic. If you haven't seen one before, it's the Duo. And if you think about how Microsoft has changed under Satya over the last 5 years, 6 years, however long that's been now, it's a very different company. And so, yes, there are still walled gardens. Microsoft's data is Microsoft's data, and there's a lot of security and protection behind that. And we know we don't live in a bubble. And so
right.
True partnership and working to, empower people, right? As our company mission statement, right? Empower people to do their best, right? And so that means finding ways to plug into APIs, right, and bring all this fun stuff together into one meeting.
Right, and I love that Microsoft's doing that. But the reality at some level too is that we still have governments. We'll see how long that all holds up.
Indeed.
But yeah, so long as we do, there are rules and regulations and GDPR, and so I think a little bit of the siloing of the data is an effect of that. Right, it's consumer privacy, California Consumer Privacy Act, first one in the United States. Right, and I think you guys are doing some stuff around privacy as well, right? Can you talk for a minute about the audience network and how we're gonna walk that fine line of protecting consumer privacy while still being able to do the things that we as marketers have come to expect around audience targeting?
Yeah, for sure, man. You're just going deep.
Hey, that's what the audience wants, right?
Curveball questions here. No, so I mean, there's a lot of work happening. I mean, if we think about the consumer privacy, the future, the quote unquote cookieless world, there's work happening there, right? And not just by us, but everybody, right? In this industry, all of the platforms who rely on cookie data presently, and what does that mean in the future? So there's definitely work happening there. But if we talk about MSAN for a minute, we just launched a partnership for brand safety, and so it's not an add-on, it's not an extra cost. It's just if you're running ads on the Microsoft Audience Network, you are automatically opted into this brand safety application. And I didn't come prepared to speak to that, but I'm happy to pull some links after the fact and include that here.
But all it is to say is basically saying you're opted in by default, so Microsoft has made that invest. And so when we talk about brand safety, like David, talk a little bit about what your goal is with the Paid Search Association, because these are obviously bigger topics that the whole industry cares about. Some companies will make it a default thing that you get, others you might have to opt in, and we'll talk a lot more about opt-in, opt-out in just a minute here. But what's sort of the role of the PSA in your mind for helping protect the industry in many ways? And David, we just scored a bingo hit on you being muted.
Newbie. Originally, I was attracted. I was approached by a guy named Mike Friedman, who had the original idea, and he actually got the domain name. And I was attracted to by the notion that there really wasn't one consolidated source of credible, curated information and resources for PPC managers. you basically had to pick and choose from among homogeneous resources like Ginny's great SMX daily newsletter. Yeah, you could get that and pick the 1 or 2 PPC articles out of that and get educated and learn about something new. But there really wasn't one place, one-stop shop for the information that people that really wanted to train themselves and keep up to date on the developments. So originally, that was the core notion or core mission to serve as a curated source of resources, learning, and news resources. And I think that's still a good core. We talked a lot about, and both of you guys were involved in these discussions about, should we provide some kind of certification so that PPC managers could carry, their PPC, PSA certification from job to job, and decided that would be outside of the scope of our mission because there were other organizations that were providing it and probably do a better job than we could at keeping it up to date. Yeah. So 2 examples of what I'm talking about are the conference, number 1, and the daily newsletter that we put out. So every member gets an email every single day with 5 to 8 links to that day's news and best practices articles.
That's curated?
Yes.
Okay, nice. So it's not a bot that's just finding
no.
Whatever has the word PPC in it?
It's people powered.
Not. Yeah, it is.
Nice. So people can sign up for that on paidsearch.org, right?
Yes, paidsearch.org. Yes.
Hey, and go ahead, John.
I was just going to say, as we think about, future state for what PSA could do, one of the most exciting things that we've talked about as a collective is the possibility of like mentoring and things like that. And that's complex, right? How do we figure that out? How do we schedule it, whatever? And there's a lot of bright men and women on the board that are participants there that we have all been eager to share what we know within the industry with our peers, and we all have a passion for mentoring, which I love, right? And so, when we figure that out, I think that'll be another town hall
exactly.
to discuss it. But
extra
that's
time
directionally, like, where do we want to go?
Right.
Yeah. Hey, and for folks who wanted to see that news from John about the brain safety, so here's that link to the article, so you can check that out as well.
Yep. And it's integral ad science, right? So if anybody that's worked in native and display knows IAS, right? It's the standard, right, for brand safety.
Yeah, so there you have it. So Microsoft worrying about brand safety. Cool. Let's shift topics here a bit. So we did promise people we're gonna tell them about the 4 money wasters. So, David, you want to lead us through those?
Sure. Let's see. Am I sharing my screen?
I'll show your screen.
All right. Okay, so I have Google Ads Editor up. Used to be Google AdWords Editor. And I'm going to go through fairly quickly 4 spots in the campaign settings and ad group settings where Google by default I'm not going to say steals your money, but borrows more than you might want them to. So the first one is, and this has changed within the past week. You used to be able to run a user location report, and if you looked at it the right way, unless you knew what I'm about to tell you, you would see that your ads were being shown either nationwide or worldwide, even if you were geo-targeting a smaller area. When I do, and this is
why is that happening? Explain that a bit more, right?
Okay, so I'm going to show it on the screen. Let's take a look at this particular campaign and its locations. So bear with me for a sec. Okay. This particular campaign is targeting Houston, Texas. And by default, the targeting method is people in or who show interest in your targeted locations. Translated, this means Google, show my ads anywhere you want. Because I don't know how they rationalize it. I'm afraid I can't explain it. There is no rationalization that I would accept. All I know for sure is that even though I think most people know about this, 9 out of 10 or even more of the campaigns and accounts that I audit have their campaigns set up by default. And I can show the advertiser using their user location report how much money they're losing by virtue of the fact that their ads are being shown outside of the locations that they're targeting.
Right. And so the recommended setting here that people can see on the screen for those listening to the podcast. So basically there's 3 ways here that it shows on screen in Ads Editor that you can target to location. And basically it breaks down between, are you interested in people physically located in that spot or who indicate some interest, or both of these, right? And it's actually a really useful setting, right? Because, if I live in Los Altos and I'm in my office in Palo Alto and I'm looking for a plumber to fix my toilet, it's actually helpful that Google knows that my house is in Los Altos, so I probably might be interested in a Los Altos plumber, even though I'm currently not there. But it's a very valid point. If you actually did not want people outside of your location because there's just not a chance in the world they're going to travel that far to come buy from you, then that could be a waste of money. So that's what you're pointing out, right, David? Pretty
much, except that I contend, and I can prove this with data, that
I love data.
If the me too, if the default setting is accepted, your ad might show in India. You might be looking for a plumber in Los Altos for your water closet in Palo Alto, but your ad could show in India.
Right. And here's the fun of machine learning, right? So the machine is trying to predict, well, how likely is it that this person in India actually needs it in Los Altos, California?
Right.
And so it says, there's 45% probability. And then you have Google, and Google says, well, so long as it's 47% or better, or 40% or better, then it's good to go, right? So now your ad with a very low probability still meets that threshold. And boom, you've got your ad shown in India. And I guess you're saying that was a wasted click.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen accounts that are spending tens of thousands of dollars per year on clicks outside of the geo-targeted area, without a doubt. And, if I had to estimate, I'd say 5% on average, 10% of the budget is being wasted on clicks from outside the geo-targeted area.
Okay.
So, cut to the chase here. This is the right, or generally the right setting. The people in or regularly in your targeted locations.
And that's actually a bit of a change too. I hadn't even really noticed that, but it used to be people in your location, but now they've added it regularly in. So I guess they're using the GPS off of the phone.
Yeah.
And thanks to John's new Android Microsoft hybrid device, Google knows even more than it did before.
Is that a phone too, John?
It is, but we're not calling it a phone. It is a new 2-screen device.
I want it.
Okay, wait, let's go full screen on there, you John. Again.
Nice.
So this thing runs.
I want one.
It is Android. It is Android, yes, but it has been Microsoft, whatever that word would be. It's normally not this color. I have a skin on it that makes it look like it's charred wood. It's normally white. But anyways, it's fantastic.
Very nice.
So it's an Android device, but on hardware made by Microsoft?
That's correct. Made by the Surface team. So if you think Panos Panay and everything that's happened with Surface over the past few years, it is the same team bringing the mobile experience. But again, hesitating to call it a phone because it is something else entirely. I mean, look, full all the way around, right?
Nice.
It does a lot of things because of its form factor. Apps like Outlook and Teams takes advantage of the dual screen, saying, okay, here's my inbox over here, and I'm in a reading pane on the other screen.
So
true multitasking.
I'm a total sucker for technology and gadgets, so I got to know more here. So it is Android-based, but it is kind of like a Microsoft thing. So does it run Word and Excel? or is that the standard
if
Android implementation of those?
It is. Actually, it is a near pure install of Android.
Okay.
So when I said earlier that this was an actual partnership between Microsoft and Google, I was not joking. That basically Panos flew to California. I forget the guy's name, the guy that's running Android right now, and basically said, "Look, we want to build this thing, but we can't do it without your help because you guys know your software better than we do." And so they did just that.
Very nice, beautiful.
And so it's a near pure install.
Is it available?
Shopping for Christmas already? There's an idea.
So I pre-ordered mine way early, like as soon as I could, and got it the day it was available, which was September 9th, 10th. It's a bit on the pricey side, but
how much?
I'm not selling the Duo here. the 256 gig hard drive is $14.99.
Okay, that's more than I paid for my phone. Yeah, right.
That's why we're not calling it a phone. That's why we're calling it a mini laptop.
Right. It is something else. And again, like we're gonna go down this rabbit hole. Twice this week, I've had major tech issues with my main computer, resulting in this morning, leading up to this call, completely redoing Windows. So that's fun. But with a little Bluetooth keyboard, I was able to work, take Teams calls, and be doing something else while I'm on a Teams call on this little guy. It is a productivity monster. So, and it fits in your pocket.
David likes to go to the beach periodically and pretend like he's working from an office. So this might be the perfect device for him, right?
Exactly.
Indeed.
Exactly.
Indeed. Yep.
Hey, David, you didn't tell us where you're calling from, so everyone knows.
I'm calling from Fort Myers Beach, Florida, which is just north of Naples. I'm on an island, and if I stood up and looked out my window, I could see the Gulf of Mexico.
See, now we're not jealous. All right. And folks who are watching, if you have like a money-saving tip that you want to put in, just put it in the chat and we'll talk about that too. But David, take us to number two.
Number two, okay. Number two is a little more obscure, and that is that it's about display campaigns exclusively, and by default, Google turns on this targeting expansion, which is Google's way of saying, we're going to help you by extending the reach of your ad group or your display ad group. So extending the reach in this case means we're going to show your ads on sites where we think people will convert. Now, a couple things here. If you're using audience targeting, you don't want to be placing ads on sites based on any criteria. You want to be following audience members around as they go to any site. So that's number one. Number two, back to my superstition, I'm not sure how Google knows, especially early in a new campaign or ad group, what sites are going to exhibit conversion behavior. So I always recommend, and I always do, just basically disable this. Now, if
go to level 5, man, level 5.
Yeah, level 5 aggressive. Yeah, I mean,
interesting. So in Optmyzr, we way back in the beginning, we had our optimization suggestions, and then we'd have a conservative mode and an aggressive mode. And we never, it was really random how we put that in, but a lot of our customers said like, yeah, we love that because we want to be able to control the aggressiveness. And it's actually impressive that Google has at least given 5 levels of selection here. Because my whole point before was like, listen, it's machine learning, and Google basically sets the threshold of when something is considered good enough or close enough.
Can I posit a thought here? So I know that Google, as does Microsoft, Facebook, everyone, we have similar audiences or lookalike audiences. But is this kind of like similar audiences light? I mean, it's like, what is it using as the criteria, right, for expansion, particularly when you say aggressive? Now, because if you think early days with Facebook, you'd upload an audience and say, okay, I want to look like, and it was a slider. I want it as close or as similar to what I uploaded, or, you know what, expand on these ideas, right? Go a little bit looser. It feels very similar in nature, but like, what is the criteria? Like, how are they expanding?
Right. Well, you know, I started to say no, but then I remembered the explanation. I can't remember whether it's in the help or a bubble that pops up, but they do say audiences and sites. So yeah, I think they're doing a similar audience thing but it's the sites that scares me.
Right. Well, they're probably inferring based on what we see these people in your audience is going to. Here's another site that's just like that. So it's almost like
maybe
similar sites, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, and I think the reason that the sites scare us a little bit is maybe into your next tip, David.
Yep.
But it's that in many of the newer smart and machine learning based systems, your ad might show on YouTube. It might be next to apps. It might be anywhere in the world. I mean, if Google figures out how to like transmit it directly into someone's brain, that's what they'll do. But they don't tell us. They don't tell us, right? In a lot of these new automated systems. And so we're just left guessing, and that's what scares us.
Yes. Yeah, but by the way, as with a lot of recommendations or best practices, there can be a place for this. Like I always reflect on clients who have had what I call warm body accounts. Basically, they have offers that appeal to almost anybody. Something like some insurance offers, sweepstakes, B2C lead gen, where all they want to do is collect consumer names and email.
Well,
addresses.
You could even go a step above that, David, and think about, and you and I even had done this together in the past, of it's a new brand. Nobody knows this brand entity. And how do you build a brand online? Well, let's be aggressive. Let's get out there and let's learn from the data, because we know we can get some quote unquote free impressions on display. Let's see what happens, right? Let's follow the data and start to track that. So, I mean, there are use cases here, but I think the main point being it's a big wild card.
That's
and
right.
if you're watching the dollars and cents very closely, maybe don't gamble.
Good point. Okay, you want to go to the third one?
Let's do number 3.
Yeah.
Number 3.
Mobile app whack-a-mole.
Number 3 is sometimes just for jollies, go into your remarketing campaign and go to placements and look at the placements where your ads are appearing. And unless you have done what I'm about to show you, you will see that your ads are appearing on mobile apps, and a lot of your clicks are coming from mobile apps. And if you look at the names of the mobile apps, you'll see, Johnny learns his first swimming lesson. Wait a minute, that's not a real app. Anyway, you're going to see that there are a lot of games, a lot of kids things, and
a lot of accidental clicks that were unlike
a lot of fat thumb clicks.
Yeah.
So
how do you get rid of those?
It used to be easy, but it's Google slowly stamped out the means to eliminate ads showing on mobile apps.
Mobile app ads are profitable, David. I mean, come on.
Absolutely. That's what I'm talking about. So I'm going to show you a technique that I learned about from reading an article that Kirk Williams, another PSA board member, wrote. And you can only do this with Google Ads Editor. You can't do it through the web interface. So basically, you go to the display campaign at the campaign level and look at it. Oh, no. You go to the display campaign. You go down to where you say keywords and targeting. You go down to, let me expand this a little bit so you can see it. Mobile app categories negative. And you add 2 negative mobile app categories, all Apple apps and all Android apps. And that's it. And from then on, you will not see mobile apps in your list of placements. In other words, your ads will not appear on mobile apps.
Right, and obviously you want to do this for all of your campaigns.
Each display campaign, yes.
My only 2 cents there, or the only devil's advocate play here would be, is if it's remarketing, retargeting, is maybe watch the data at first, right? Because you know something about them, it's behavior, right? They've been to the site, they've been to your app, whatever that looks like. And so maybe follow them around a little bit and say, okay, does it make sense for me to be showing? So if I show them this ad on an app, do they actually click through and take action? If so, great. And now I can just play the whack-a-mole game that I was referencing, right? Saying, okay, these apps are great. Some of these apps are not so good. Let's just follow the data and exclude those individually. Versus, again, particularly if you're doing level 5 aggressive, on, say, an in market or another type of targeting, that might be
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me respond to that quickly. I have looked at the data in general and found that most of the time, there are exceptions. Most of the time, there are a lot of clicks. But
zero conversion.
Scant or zero conversion. And my theory is what Fred was just saying. It's fat thumbs. It's people that hit the ad by mistake. So, yeah, you can play whack-a-mole with the mobile apps, but they come back with insane velocity. In other words, you stamp them out and they come back.
Well, one thing we put in Optmyzr is if you want to play the whack-a-mole, but at least automate that to your criteria, you can actually look at when something was an ad placement, look at the actual numbers, and if it had zero conversions, sure, make it a negative. But if it did somehow convert, keep it. And
do that automatically?
We can do that automatically. Yeah.
Nice, very nice.
That's sexy. Just putting that out there. That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the other question, I suppose, is like attribution models, right? So I imagine if you're in the middle of playing, even if you fat thumbed it, like you might have actually been that person who wanted to buy, but you're like, no, I'm busy. I want to play my Tetris.
Right.
And then you come back to it later and then you buy, right? So make sure that your attribution model accounts for not just last click.
Right.
As you do this evaluation. All right, let's take us home with the fourth money waster. And then
okay, the fourth one is I'm not gonna. I've got nothing to demonstrate. It's a little bit of a superstition of mine, and I don't have data. Sorry, Fred. I don't have data to back this up. But I don't like
the feeling. Says
it's a feeling. This is based on my feelings. I don't like the fact that by default, when you create a new campaign, the bidding model is enhanced CPC, eCPC. And my feeling is based on my distrust of the ability for the bidding algorithm to know anything about the conversion behavior of people as it relates to the offer. So Google says, for example, that in order to use target CPA bidding, you need to have 15 or so, used to be 30, used to be 50, now it's 15 conversions over the course of 30 days, which I think makes sense because you've got some behavior to fuel the algorithm. Whereas when a campaign starts out with eCPC bidding, there's no behavior, there's no data, nothing's built up. And I suspect, and there's a little bit of data behind this, but it's anecdotal. I couldn't print it out. Pedro has the same feeling. Good. I've seen really insanely high CPCs at the beginning of a campaign effort, and my suspicion is, that's Google's automation thrashing. Remember that term, thrashing, in the computer world? Thrashing back and forth, trying to attenuate on the signal, let's say.
That's some big words, gentlemen.
Yeah, I know. Geeky words.
John, are you playing a tiny violin? Are you responding there too?
No, just a weird little nervous tick.
Okay. I just watched an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm where Larry David is doing some gestures completely by mistake, and there's a person who's deaf who watches him and thinks he just said something horrendous.
Oh my God.
So, your hands under control, John.
Hopefully I didn't offend anybody.
But speaking about enhanced CPC, right? So, and again, I think it goes to this whole machine learning thing. So Google, even from the very get-go, sort of sees these signals and finds that, these users seem similar to those users. And for those users, we think they tend to convert on these types of offers. But they have an inkling of what might work. But I think the point to take away here is that if you have a more limited budget and if you are smart about PPC, you can probably allocate it in places that have a pretty high probability of converting, and you don't need to go experimental. You don't need to use machine learning at that stage, right? So keep more control in the beginning, and then as your budgets start to go up, as there's more data for Google to to base its decisions based on what it sees from you as opposed to the whole world, that's maybe when it makes sense to turn these systems on. And then, of course, safeguard them by putting in place some smart automations, which we tend to call automation layers, right? So put your own automation on top of Google's and on top of Microsoft's, so that the engines can do the amazing things they do. But because let's face it, I mean, the type of machine learning and AI that Microsoft and Google have access to, like I say, there's not enough money between any of us advertisers to replicate that, right? So
I actually did a training session last week where I talked about the Microsoft Advertising Recommendations tab, right? And just called. I was like, in the past, that likely would get boos from a lot of people, but I can't speak for the Google side, but on the Microsoft side, man, just a ton of investment in that recommendation engine, whether that's bid and budget, and it's no longer just a hey, you should spend more. It's a we think you can spend X amount and that will impact you at X number of clicks, X number of conversions, right? So it's actually showing you potential impact of a recommended change. But where I think the machine learning just is magical is the recommendation engine behind RSAs. So it's actually looking at your account, the ads that you're running, and saying, hey, let's use these headlines, these body copy, and here's a recommended ad. They're spot on. And it's even referencing competitive data sets to say, how are competitors formatting their RSAs that are working well, and what can we learn from that to craft a better RSA for you and your account? I mean, it's phenomenal, right? And it's such a subtle thing. And so, yeah, I mean, that's just tip of the iceberg when we think about what can machine learning and what can the platform side automations do for you, knowing that you can take it with an Optmyzr, with a whatever, right, and really ramp that up in a big way.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's like a topic that we could spend a whole session on, RSA versus ETA. Right. In fact, Brad Geddes, Ginny, and myself are doing a session at SMX. I think it's on December 8th. We're going to talk about automation of your ads, RSA versus ETA, which one is the winner. There's slight concern that Google is moving away from ETAs. They've made it really hard to add these in accounts. So obviously, John from Microsoft also says RSAs are really good. I mean, are there any caveats? Are there any prerequisites that you really see people have to do to get them to perform at the level that you're talking about?
Well, so I mean, the data speaks for itself, and I've not practiced in the data anymore. I was a couple months ago because I was very much in that headspace. But yeah, I mean, across the board, when you think about click-through rates, conversion rates, what we are seeing on the Microsoft advertising platform is that RSAs are just straight rocking right now. And it's not the same in every vertical, but the majority of verticals we're seeing positive performance.
And how do you measure positive performance, if I may ask?
So it would be when an RSA is present in an ad group with at least one other expanded text ad, what is the delta, right, in performance? And so looking at that across a wide data set and looking at then click-through rate difference, conversion rate difference, and CPA difference.
Right. Wow. And if you looked at the conversion rate difference, then I sort of get it. And ultimately, you still want to look at profitability, not just like conversion rate. But Google often makes the argument that it's about incrementality rather than just actual numbers.
But I think it goes back to like an argument we've all made probably various times in our careers to say, look, the ad with the best click-through rate may not be the best ad. Right? It may not be the message that is landing appropriately to drive conversion action on the website. That's a big deal, right? And so people get so hung up on click-through, even to this day. Yes, it's important. I mean, we can't ignore it, but it is also not the only stat coming through, and certainly not the most important.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay, John, I know you got some things lined up to tell us about Microsoft that are pretty unique. So.
Yeah, let me know when my screen can be shared. I'm actually going to go a little bit out of order from what we talked about earlier. So just, this conversation, where's Google pinching you? Great. I'm coming in just to say, what are some things happening on the Microsoft side that are differentiators? And we've been talking about LinkedIn profile targeting for a long time. I'm referencing it again because it's fully live. And so like if you were waiting for it to come out of beta so that you could use it, the wait is over, has been now for close to a month. And so what does it mean? Well, Microsoft bought LinkedIn 4 years ago. This is really the first instance of data sets from those two companies coming together. And what it means is whether it's search, DSA, shopping, an MSAN, an audience network campaign, you can layer in company name. So if you're doing account-based marketing, boom, you've got another layer of targeting here. Job function, industries, right? And so, bid only, target and bid, of course. So great feature here. And if you're not tapping into it, particularly if you're in the B2B space, although I would argue there's potential opportunity to think about this outside of B2B, but B2B is the clear winner here. Any commentary from the two of you before I change gears?
No, I mean, I love the whole LinkedIn integration. And I think to put it in perspective for people, it's really that age-old question of how do you become successful in B2B PPC advertising? The problem has always been, I'm selling printers, but I want to sell to a corporation, a corporate buyer, someone who's going to buy an expensive printer, not a home user who wants the $30 printer. And that's always been hard to distinguish, right? Because you've had keywords, printers, and then you had audiences. But audiences were fairly broad. Right. We've recently gotten pretty good.
Well, in differentiating between a B2B buyer and a consumer buyer, if they just search on printer ink, how do you tell the difference, right? It's the same query either way. But this is, so, again, I mentioned ABM, account-based marketing. Like if you know these companies, or at least people that are in these industries, right, with these job titles are the ones that are buying that, printer ink, now you have the layer to say, okay, I can safely, comfortably bid on such a general term, but because I'm layering it with this other targeting, I'm isolating it to just the people that are likely to buy. I mean, it's pretty special.
Hey, that reminds me, there's another money waster that we were discussing before we went live. Bid adjustments.
That's right. Yeah. So, and this is another opportunity for that to happen. Yeah. So one of the things I came to the table with, we were talking about ECPC, and I'm like, yes, absolutely. And everyone needs to be really mindful when you're applying bid adjustments. And so that could be age, gender, location, however many audiences deep you have stacked for a particular ad group or campaign, location, in the case of our platform, LinkedIn, profile targeting, all of these things. So if you have bid adjustments at every layer, that can get out of control in a hurry. So Frederick, you confirmed that on the Google side, it's capped at 1,000%.
I believe it's 1,000%.
Yeah. In the short amount of time that we've been on the phone since then, I've not been able to get an answer on what we're doing. I'm assuming it's something similar. I will continue to dig and confirm that, but something to watch for, right? And again, on the Microsoft advertising side, even if you're using, say, a bid strategy like target CPA, those bid adjustments still come in at the end. So you've got the bid automation that's happening, and then your bid adjustments are still a factor in your final bid price. And so be mindful of how you're stacking those and be very strategic in doing so.
Yeah, and I even wrote a script for that. I think at 20.
Of course you did, Frederick.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, if it's a problem, maybe write it. But my search engine's not working. Well, I found a thing, but okay, maybe search engine land's not working right now. Anyway, there's a script out there. There you go. It'll measure how much you're stacking your bid adjustments because it's really out of control. And this was based on a personal pain point. Like one time a customer was like, why did you bid like $500 on this click? I was like, I don't know. And then, and especially in the legal vertical. So we had Nava Hopkins on last week. She's in the legal space. Great session about bid management if you want to watch that one. But you take $100 bid and you even apply 1,000% bid adjustment. You're going to be in a world of hurt. And actually, I don't think it's $1,000. It may not be 1,000% bid adjustment, but I think it's $1,000 CPC cap that Google puts in.
Wow,
still a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, John.
All right, let's talk image extensions. So for those that have been doing this work for a while, you'll know that on the Microsoft advertising side, even back when we were still calling ourselves Bing Ads, we've had an image extension now for several years. Even back when Google had their initial beta and then sunset it, we managed to keep ours. Well, recently we just added to that multi-images, meaning that you could have effectively a carousel appearing with your search ads in the SERPs. And so creates a truly beautiful experience. This is like the beginning of a multi-stage process for us. This photo is something of an alluding factor to what may come, right? So we think about verticals that have very image-based products how do we lean into that within the SERP? But regardless, whatever vertical you're in, that's live today. But what I want to fast forward to, and apologies for zipping through a bunch of slides really quickly. Hopefully I don't give you whiplash. But I want to touch on that a lot of businesses, you know what you're selling, you know what you're doing, you're great at running your campaigns, but you're like, I don't have time to go and create beautiful photography for an image extension or say a display ad or an audience ad on the Microsoft Audience Network. What do I do? Well, we have solved that to an extent in that a partnership with Shutterstock accessed over 300 million commercially licensed images. That is a lot of images. And those are available to you in the platform today, whether you're creating an image extension, multi-image extension, or creating an audience ad for the Audience Network. And I did several tests. I was like, I'm just going to throw in some wacky niche verticals and just see if an appropriate image comes up. And time again, I was impressed. And so one, it's Shutterstock, right, opening up in that partnership, but two, leveraging the Bing search technology to get you an accurate result when you're doing a search in the UI. And so if you hadn't heard about this one, this was like, in my mind, one of the most exciting developments that's come around in a while, but it's been pretty quiet.
Yeah, and I think people got to take advantage, right? Anytime there's
absolutely
like you in the search engine, that just draws people attention. I would worry that over time, like I'm gonna see all of the PPC agencies taking pictures of happy people sitting around a meeting table and shaking hands, and then it's like, oh my god, like what?
Yeah. Oh, it totally could happen. Yeah.
But until that day comes, like definitely take advantage of this.
And I would say, like my perspective, I can't speak for the engineers behind this, but like my perspective as an advertiser, as a marketer, is if and when you can get access to original photography, right, that you've had creative control over, that is best practice, and that should be your number one option. This is that fail-safe safety net, right, for when maybe budget's tight, or two, you know what, I know I can get them, but I can't get them for another 3 months, 6 months, but I want to launch today. I think that there is room, right? Room in there. But this should never be just, you know what, screw it, I don't need the original photography, I'm only going to use these. That shouldn't be your default. Nice.
Hey, we got the audience participating here. So Yuki Weinberg, thank you for letting us know that it looks like a 900% max bid adjustment.
Yep. Well, that is correct. So if you're doing an individual bid adjustment, say it's for gender, yeah, you could max that to 900%. What I need to confirm is if you have them stacked across multiple targets and you've got, say, 20% on one, 500 on another, right? What is the max combination that you could potentially go up to? It may very well be 900, but that's what I need to confirm, because Frederick was saying that it's 1,000% on
the opposite of that too, right? I mean, you can make negative bid adjustments, and those could also end up stacking to like basically taking your ads off the page. So be careful. Right. Tim, loyal listener, has a question about LinkedIn data.
So I would love to be able to say, yeah, that's happening.
Let's ask the question here for people just listening. Yeah. But so any plans to give that buyer data on the social side, like profile targeting, but reversed?
Correct. Yeah. And like, what are people searching for on the LinkedIn side? We all know that data exists. I will say that it was a very complex process involving engineers on both teams. So LinkedIn, even though it's owned by Microsoft, is still treated as an isolated company. So that's an important detail to keep in mind. And so the data sets are actually in isolated buckets. And so just for us to get what we have today for LinkedIn profile targeting took feats of engineering, feats of legal, right? Making sure that data is safe, it's protected. And so that took a long time. I know that conversations continue in terms of how can we expand that? What else can we do with this data on both sides of the platform? But there's no development that I'm aware of that I can safely share today.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thanks for that question, Tim. All right, John, we probably have time for maybe one more.
Yep. I'll just touch on the Microsoft Audience Network very briefly. And so for those that are new to me, because I've said it now like a dozen times, Microsoft Audience Network is a native ad platform, again, analogous to the Google Display Network, in that it's in the same platform as search campaigns, but now you've got an opportunity to go out and on a CPC basis, bid on placements on MSN.com, the Edge browser, Outlook.com, and a host of new, like, I think it's Good Housekeeping is one of our more recent, high quality publisher partners that have come on board, and that will continue to grow. But this is fully live in the US. It is in pilot in, say, Canada, UK, elsewhere in Europe, and in APAC. But in the United States, if you've not looked at this yet, I would recommend taking a good look, because those are high quality placements. And when you think about LinkedIn profile targeting, what you can do with audiences in market, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, this is a very attractive option. And so, beautiful ad, and a subtle plug here. If you're into the Google import tool, say, okay, I've done a lot of work on the Google side, and I want to replicate that on Microsoft Advertising. That applies to your Google display campaigns as well. Mm-hmm. So if you have a display campaign that's rocking, it's got in-market audiences and soon remarketing lists, you can actually import all of that over, including the ads. So if you have responsive display ads on the Google side, that will come through as an audience ad on our side, including the image. So again, don't do double work if you don't have to. TBD on when Google import for remarketing lists will be live. But soon, like maybe even within a month. But just a quick explanation there, that is not to say you will import the people in the audience. It is saying I want to import the logic, like the rule that I'm building that list from. So people that have visited my homepage, right? It would take that list logic and pull it over and create that list on the Microsoft Advertising side to immediately say, okay, I want to start building this from day one. And if you've imported a Google display campaign, it would come with that targeting in place already. So just a quick pitch.
Right. And then we have another question here about LinkedIn. But so is it possible to actually target just a job function as opposed to do a bid adjustment? And the point being that if you do the bid adjustment, you may still show outside of that specific targeting?
Let me think about this for a second. I believe it is possible to isolate the LinkedIn profile targeting audience. So that would be bid or be target in bid, right? So that is possible for you to do. And now in terms of thinking through the and or logic, it is limited. So if you think about like a custom combination type strategy, that is a limitation of our LinkedIn profile targeting today. And so you're going to need to be a little more blunt force with this today in how you approach it. Long term, that again, we know that's a pain point. It is a flag that's raised, and we're aware of and working towards fixing it.
Nice. Well, I can't believe we've already been talking hours. So
went fast.
Yeah, right. This was fun. But yeah. So, David, I know there's some stuff we didn't get to talk about, but I'll give the floor to you to maybe make some final comments and tell us one more thing about PSA.
Well, let's see, PSA, and there's some synergy between the PSA and there's a LinkedIn group that I started 10 or 11 years ago called PPC Pro People that now has 18,000 members or 19,000. And we will not exactly merge the two, but we will encourage the members of one to cross-pollinate the other. So look for that coming up. And look for the stuff that John was talking about. Mentoring is really big on our agenda, both standalone and as part of the conference.
Cool. So, John, let's hear from you, final points and how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, if anybody has questions, I love to talk shop. And so, hit me up, email, Twitter. And of course, there's all kinds of good information on the blog, as well as we have an actual training portal. So it's the Learning Lab. And so feel free to come in and take a peek and brush up on your Microsoft advertising skills. But otherwise, yeah, if anybody has questions about any of the features I referenced or has any additional commentary, again, feel free. I'm an open book.
Cool. And that email address that we're showing is correct? No N?
Microsoft could not spare an N for me. All I got was Jolie.
Jolie. It's because you bought all the memory for your phone, right? All 250.
That's right. No, my friends, including Perna, Virgie, call me Jolly now because of this. So.
Oh, Perna. He's always fun. Good. Hey, well, thanks for joining me. Thanks, everyone, for listening. Next week, we'll be back. We have an episode on e-commerce. I mean, we are going into Q4, so we can't help it, but we got to talk about e-commerce. And we're going to get really tactical again with some really good advice from our speakers, Brett Curry, next week. He's the host of another PPC podcast. So thank you all for joining. Gentlemen, stay on. We're going to wrap it up here, but thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic.